It got to a point early in the first quarter where she was gassed and she asked for a sub. That was awesome for her to do. A lot of players will try to fight through that. I've got to recognize that sooner before she gets to that point, because if I keep letting her get to that point, fourth quarter, she's going to lose her legs. So just got to, it's just a learning process, learning her, learning the rest of our team, and finding out who's playing well in which rotations. I think she got to the point where she was just completely gassed. Like when she looked over me, I thought I was gonna have to go grab her and help her get to the sideline right there at the end of the first. But we have to do better. Like we can't let her get to that point. She just won't be able to last. And the way people are guarding her, I mean, she's seeing a red, which is a double team. She's seeing hard hedges. Like they're being real physical with her. That's how it's going to be for her. And so we've got to make sure we're doing what we can to protect her. So she's able to go in the fourth at the same level she is in the first.
I think the biggest transition is just the physicality. Everybody's super physical. It doesn't always get called. So I would say that's the biggest thing. I think, 1 through 5 or every single person on every roster that we're going to play is so talented. I mean, the talent level is obviously very different than in college. So getting used to that, no matter who subs into the game, it's not really anybody you can ever relax off of, because that's how competitive this league is. Like, people are just too good for that.
Callie, that was Caitlin Clark and her coach talking about sort of what transpired during that game for her. And we were speaking earlier about, her debut, and she had a great debut. But this clip was floating around Twitter with her coach talking, and the quote about the physicality was going around Twitter, and the reactions to it, was so bizarre to me. The biggest transition is the physicality. Everyone is super physical, and it doesn't always get called. That it doesn't always get called part is like, well, welcome to the WNBA, Caitlin. But that's part of what people like Cheryl Swoops and Diana Taurasi were talking about in terms of learning curves and transitioning to the WNBA. And I pointed that out, and others did as well. And they came for me, Callie, And I don't care if people come for me. And when I say they, I'm referring to people, fans, people on Twitter, whoever. But I don't understand the hyper defensiveness around, sensitivity, yeah, but I was trying to, using my therapy words here, okay, Callie? I want to, seriously, I want to validate, their feelings, but there's just a defensive reaction when someone suggests like there could be a learning curve, or a transition, and it's not just for Angel Reese. That's the thing, right? So I tweeted this, and I was being a little snarky. I guess the WNBA legends talking about learning curves and the transition may actually know a thing or two. Shocking, right? And I was being a little snarky because, quite frankly, I am annoyed by these fans, or new fans rather. I'm not even sure if they're fans yet. It's hard to say, who continue to critique legends of the game, existing players of the game, all in the name of defending, and I don't want to say that it's all Caitlin Clark, but I'd be disingenuous if I didn't say that it's not a majority of Caitlin Clark supporters, fans, if you will, stans, as we like to call them on Twitter, who are doing this, right? But I've also seen it with, like, if you want to say Iowa fans, because I've seen some stuff, when it comes to the Aces, and they're just like, oh, we only want to see Kate Martin. Like, and I actually really like Kate Martin. I hope she makes the squad, but she may not make the squad. So this is Asia Wilson's team, people. And then, but I've also seen it with Angel Reese fans as well, sometimes with the Chicago Sky. So it's just like new fans. Right? You really need to kind of, it's not that you're not welcome, but like I was always taught, Callie, if you're going to talk about a subject, right? I get what you want to see, right? But in the name of wanting to see the players that you're really interested in, there's just a lot of disrespect of other players. No one's interested in seeing you. Nobody cares about you. The only reason attention is on you guys now is because of XYZ player. And no, that's just not accurate. And so there are people like me, there are other people, who cover the league saying like, chill on this. And it's becoming a bit much now, Callie.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people need to understand that when you're entering a new space like the WNBA, there's just a new culture. There's a wealth of history and context that you should try to at least have a grasp of, when you want to enter discussions and make statements like some of the ones that you were referencing about why people are paying attention to certain things or why people are calling out certain things. Like if you're going to enter those discussions, it would be good to know relevant context. And I think something that I love a lot about the WNBA is that there's so much history. I mean, I was talking earlier about how the league is so young, but the history is so rich. I mean, I was really shocked to see some fans on Twitter the other day taking issue with Diana Taurasi being called the White Mamba. For as long as I can remember, she's been called the White Mamba because Kobe Bryant gave her that name, and we have the Gold Mamba. We got all types of Mambas thanks to Kobe. People need to kind of, know the context. And it was really strange to see people when they were confronted with that information, like, hey, we didn't make up this name, Kobe Bryant did. They still had the nerve, I'm sorry to say this, but the nerve to take issue and call things into question. And it's just like, please. And here's that statement from the Phoenix Mercury saying, we love that our league is growing and that you're here, but we have 27 years of exceptional women's basketball history for you to catch up on. And I would just implore
And they're
people,
quoting a tweet from ESPN because there was a video in which Vanessa Bryant, Kobe Bryant's widow, did a voiceover, and it's a tribute to Diana Taurasi, and she refers to her as the White Mamba in the video and says the reason why Kobe called her this is because of like the player that she is.
But what I will tell you is that wasn't even enough for some new fans that just didn't know, because they were like, oh, well, I don't care if Vanessa Bryant says it. I need to hear it from Kobe. And I'm like, okay, like there are people giving examples. Like, here's Kobe saying it. It'll never be enough if you don't know what you're talking about. That's the biggest thing that I'm trying to emphasize. People need to learn. And I think that would help a lot. I think sometimes, and you were talking about therapy speak and kind of validating. I think sometimes when you don't know things and when you're new, it is easy to be defensive and kind of confrontational. That's you see that in real life.
But not even just that, because Caitlin Clark fans jumped in and they were like, she's the White Mamba. And it's like, what is happening here? It's just like, I just need everyone to take a step back and take a deep breath, right?
Absolutely.
Like and the reason why it's so bizarre is because Diana Taurasi is not even that popular. I mean, she is, but when I say that, meaning not that popular with a lot of fans. Like she's a very polarizing player is really my point.
Okay.
So when I say not that popular, I don't mean it as obviously she's one of the greats, but what I mean, and some would consider her a GOAT, right? But she a lot of fans don't like her, like she's polarizing. And so, but you had those same fans who are hypercritical of Diana, defending her. So this is not, this is why I want to make clear, this is not a white thing. People try to say it's race. It's not about that. This is about understanding and knowing the history of the league. And I get it. Like if you don't, for us, people who are new to covering it, right? Like I'm diving into it and others, it is upon us to reflect information accurately. So that's fine. You may not need to know every single thing, but just don't be so persistent about your arguments and the things you say when you don't have the requisite knowledge to discuss some of these things and the information just isn't correct. And I don't get the reason to want to downplay any of the players. Like what's the point? Like what purpose does it serve, And I thought I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it's a lack of understanding of the culture of the league. Like, yes, we mentioned the history, but even like when we reference Diana Taurasi and how she's not super well liked, but even those comments that she made about Caitlin Clark, there being an adjustment period, a lot of people took issue with those because they don't know DT, like, and they don't understand kind of the culture of how all this connects. Like, Diana is not like that's her personality towards everyone and anything. Like that's not unique to Caitlin Clark. I think a lot of people maybe feel like
I hear
Caitlin
you.
is being like singled out because they don't understand the
But
culture.
you know what?
Like,
You know what, Callie? The reason why I think that's true, but like I don't think that's the real driving point. I'm gonna tell you why. Is because they got mad at what Brianna Stewart said. They got mad at what Cheryl Swoops said. They get mad at any potential slight or criticism. And I want to know when saying a rookie will have a learning curve as they transition to the pros became a controversial statement. It is said in every freaking sport there is male or female. It is a regular thing that is said. And by the way, when Cheryl Swoops made her comments, it was not exclusive to Caitlin Clark. She talked about Angel Reese. When Diana Taurasi made her comments, it was not exclusive to Caitlin Clark. She spoke about Camila Cardoza. And by the way, she was asked that question. She didn't just come out and say that. She was asked a question. But yes, you are correct. That is Diana's personality. And so expecting that she will back off of it is crazy. And expecting that any of these women will back off of it is crazy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but she followed up and said positive things about Caitlin. Like, I don't know if people listen to the full comments. Like, maybe not the initial question when she was asked by Scott Van Pelt, but like during one of their like media availabilities, she did say she kind of doubled down. She was just like, listen, you're having an adjustment from kindergarten to first grade. You have an adjustment from high school to college.
What she did is call them sensitive. She called them sensitive.
And she did call them sensitive. But then she ended that by saying it's not going to be a terrible adjustment for Caitlin. She's been successful at every level. Diana Taurasi said this, and I remember watching it being like, wow, this is like nicer than I would expect DT to be. So I think people also are not they're not giving these players the opportunity to like say the full thing. Like, we mentioned, but again, that's just like sensitivity. I don't, and like you said, we want to know why that is and when that'll change. We don't know.
Well, you said they're not giving players to say the full thing. And I just want to say, because like this theme around the fans, I think it's going to be a continuing thing. And over the weekend for the WNBA Canada game, Kia Nurse and Nneka, who's the president of the and I always mess this up, the players union, because I'm going to mess up the acronym.
WNBPA.
I always get tongue twisted when trying to say it, right? And so they were answering questions, but in there, they both had some messaging for new fans as well. So let's hear from them.
I think that we're at a very pivotal moment for the history of our league. I love to see all the energy. I love to see all the new fans. I would implore upon them to do their homework in history just so that they can kind of better understand things, because we have people that are working hard in the front office, in the offices of these teams. We have all these players that have been around for a long time, that played with OGs that are no longer playing, that we're standing on the backs on. So I think I really love the conversations around it. But I think it's also our responsibility to make sure that we're doing the best for this league, top to bottom.
Kia, if you had a message for any new fans that kind of tuned in tonight, especially from the Canadian side, what would you say for this upcoming W season and the Olympics?
I would say welcome. You are in for an absolute ride. This is one of the best sports in the world. This is the best league in the world for women's basketball, and night in, night out, it is competitive, it is fierce, and there are a lot of new faces to this league that everybody is very excited about, but there are some vets in this league as well who have put their stamp on the game, and I'm excited for people to see them as well. So welcome into the ride. It'll be a good one.
Yeah, that was Kia Nurse, and she was obviously up there on the podium with Dearica Hamby after the Sparks won the WNBA Canada game. But I thought that was interesting to see both of them kind of throwing in stuff about kind of acknowledging, players right now who are playing who put their stamp on the game, and Nneka is sort of talking about doing the research. And I think it just ties into what, we saw with the White Mamba thing with Diana and just everything that we're seeing. I get it. We're not trying to make it a homework assignment, but it's the reason a lot of this is being said is because of the aggressive approach from some of the new fans and how they're attacking players and dismissing others. And, and it's so odd because that's actually not Caitlin Clark's nature, right? Like even, the comments that Cheryl Reeve made where she talked about the fact that like Caitlin Clark isn't the only player, but it's not like any knock towards Caitlin. Caitlin Clark liked a video of that, right? Like she liked a video about it. So she's not offended, by someone saying that. She is talking about the physicality of the game and herself acknowledging it's something she has to adjust to, right? So I don't understand the pushback when others say it. I want people to understand that you can have to adjust to the league and there can be a learning curve and you still ultimately have a great season and you still go on to be an all-time great. The fact that you have to do that doesn't mean it's a negative thing. And the fact that we are saying that there are other players and that you should pay attention to them without understanding the dynamics and the history of the league and maybe why they were not even given the opportunity to be put on display and the access was not for everyone to see, everyone just starts to take it like, oh, they weren't good or they weren't exciting. And that's not the reason why. We're not going to dive into all the reasons right now why, but I'm just saying without knowing the history and understanding, it does come off very disrespectful, Callie. And so if people are wondering like, why are we talking about this? Why are we having a conversation about this? Is because the WNBA is a new league. You've mentioned that, newer league. So not new, but it's newer. It's still arguably in its infancy. And so it's growing now. It's at a pivotal moment, but it's very different than the NBA. It's very different than other leagues. It's a diverse league with a diverse population. And that diverse population is not going to just accept people disrespecting things, disrespecting players, disrespecting the game's history, nor should it be, right? And so that's why we have this conflict occurring. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon, Callie.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people will make comparisons to the NBA. Like, why didn't Victor Wembanyama get this type? Why wasn't there this type of controversy with his fans? But I think the difference is that his fans didn't come in with the same what's the word, brazen attitude, like Victor Wembanyama's fans understood that like, yes, he's a really exciting prospect, but there could be an adjustment period and he's not like, he's not gonna be immediately better than the greats of the game and things like that. And so I hope that that's the biggest takeaway. And when you were talking, something that stood out to me is, you mentioned Caitlin's demeanor and like her not being someone who's offended by these things. And that's actually something I respect so deeply about Caitlin. Like you're so right about that. Like she doesn't take issue with, criticism. She doesn't take issue with like shining a light on other players. And this is not her responsibility, but I almost feel like her fans won't kind of take a step back until she makes a more,
direct statement.
Like a direct statement about how they should be navigating this space as they support her. And again, like it's not her responsibility. I don't think she should have to do it. I don't think she should be being asked some of the questions that she's asked. I don't think the conversation surrounding her should be the way that it is. I don't think that the league's vets should be asking questions, should be asked about her in the way that they are. I think all of this ties into what we've been discussing this whole show is like, there are issues with the way the league is being covered, with the way that Caitlin is being covered, by the way, different teams are being covered. But ultimately, I think with how the dice have fallen, it might fall on her. Like if we do want to see some change, she might be the one that has to come out and say like, hey, listen, like, please get it together.
Right. And I would just leave, people with listen to Caitlin and listen to her own words. Like, we pointed out, she hasn't said things directly, but she said things that would help you see that like she's not necessarily in conflict with some of these things that are being said. And there was a video, I mean, there's so much stuff and we can't like show everything, but there was like a video that was surfacing like with her kind of talking about the pressure that, like she felt at Iowa in terms of having, like she gets to go on all these shows and everyone sees it and probably thinks it's cool, but then she comes back here and she still is held responsible, right, for the losses. And like she, and I thought that was so important because I think one of the things that myself and you and others have said is like, this is a lot of pressure to put on her, right? And that was part of like what her coach's message was, which was, we got to do a better job of not letting her get, you know, tired, get to that point, you know, like making sure she understands like you have teammates you can rely on, and you do. You have Aaliyah Boston, right? You have a lot, and just other. I mean, you have like a very, you know, strong team around you that can support you, right? Right? You have Mitchell, you have Nelissa Smith. I mean, you just have like so many players on that squad, and so you don't have to like bear it alone. And I think that's important, like for her fans to stop, you know, putting that kind of pressure on her. And I say that because like it almost, and I said this was something to watch, because you know there's probably a pressure on Indiana feeling like, well, they got to play Caitlin, like because that's what people want to see, and she has to get this many minutes and she has to like put up this many numbers, and it like they need to play the offense the best way that it'll work for all the players. And if you do that, Caitlin is going to shine and everyone else is going to shine too. You don't have to like cater it to her, and that's probably not the best thing anyway right now in her rookie season. So I just, again, if some are, you know, some of the people who support Caitlin, you know, her really, really, you know, I'm not talking about everyday fans, because we all support Caitlin. And believe it or not, we all want her to thrive. But what I'm saying is like her, you know, I'm a Steph Curry stan. I wear that proudly, right? Like for her stans, the people who are like very, very feel strongly about her, right? And I get it. I get what it is to love a player like that, because I get very defensive if you start talking about Steph Curry, right? But it's like, just take a step back and give Caitlin, you know, time to blossom. She will. And like, let's not put all of this pressure on her. And media, please stop asking her weird questions. She got another one. I'm not going to even give it attention. But fans, like, let's just stop the weirdness, please. I'm sorry. It's the best way I can describe it. Callie, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, you stop the weirdness is a great way to end this. Let's stop the weirdness. Together, we can stop the weirdness. Please.